My name is Frank, and I'm a bulldog. That means my ears hang like little flags, my face looks like crumpled paper, and I snore so loudly that anyone nearby might think, am I really going to sleep next to that? But you know what? I know my worth. We bulldogs have a unique look. It's an acquired taste, as they say. But those who truly love us understand. Under this airbag face hides a heart of gold. I always dreamed of having a home of my own. I imagined it somewhere in the depths of my bulldog consciousness while I sat in the shelter. Oh yes, the shelter. A place that smells a bit sad. But it was my home, until that day. So, there I was, dozing off, sprawled across my cage, when suddenly, footsteps echoed down the corridor. I perked up. The sound was like someone had finally decided to come for that special dog. Of course, I didn't expect it to be me. I mean, come on. I'm a bulldog, not some pretty pooch with a long, silky coat that begs for endless petting, or a tiny terrier with pointy ears. I look like the kind of dog where you'd wonder if I even have eyes. And then he appeared, my owner, or rather, the one who was about to become my owner, if I played my cards right. He walked over to my cage, and I threw him my most serious, pensive look. Kind of like saying, oh, you like faces like mine too? And you know what? He didn't walk away, didn't turn around, didn't sigh in relief. He just looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw that little spark, as if he could already picture the future, where I'd be lounging on his couch, chewing toys, like it's always been that way. Then this guy squatted down and said, hey buddy, how about coming home with me? Like it was that simple, like we did this every day. He seemed surprised at his own boldness, but I already understood him. Time to head out. They put me in the car. If you've never ridden in the back seat, you wouldn't understand what real life feels like. I immediately climbed onto the seat and decided to behave like a dignified passenger. Well, at least for the first 5 minutes. The car started moving, and I realized that this moment was my chance to savor freedom. I stuck my head out the window, and the wind puffed up my cheeks like two little sacks. My eyes started tearing up from the speed, and I probably looked like an old man on a roller coaster, but it was so wonderful, I didn't care. This wasn't just a ride. It was my journey to a new life. Cars passing by, people in them eating their burgers, and I look at them, like saying, hey, you there, with the sandwiches? Yeah, you're lucky I'm not in your car. Otherwise, there'd be nothing left. And next to me, my owner, serious, focused, probably thinking, well, I got myself this guy, and he snores. I wonder how the neighbors will feel about this. But I think he already knew he'd never let me go. And where would I go anyway? Certainly not back to the shelter. When we arrived, I was a bit bewildered. You know, a new place, new smells. It's like walking into a store and not knowing where to start. My owner opened the door, took a deep breath, and said, well, Frank, welcome home. I looked around. Okay, not a palace, but it looked cozy. I instantly felt, this is where I'll be happy. At first, I entered cautiously, as any respectable dog would, especially when seeing their new home for the first time. My owner shut the door behind us and went forward, pointing out each corner as if on a tour. I mapped out my plan. First, check if there are any cats around. You know, they like to leave smells everywhere. Then sniff all the corners and, of course, find my bowl. And that's when I saw it. The couch. Oh, it wasn't just a couch. It was a throne, a royal hall, made for a bulldog to stretch out. I slowly approached and sat next to it to show that I'm a respectable dog who appreciates good furniture. But my owner looked at me with a smile, as if winking, like, why are you sitting? Go on, Frank, this couch is yours. I carefully climbed up and sprawled out in the way only a bulldog can, sighing with happiness, feeling my muscles relax, and my mind instantly shifting into full relax mode. He sat next to me, patted my side, and said, well, Frank, this is your home now. I looked at him with a touch of suspicion, like, are you sure you're not going to ask me to pay rent later? But his gaze was sincere, and I immediately understood. This guy wasn't kidding. This was truly my home. In the evening, after a few hours on the couch, I finally decided to take a walk and explore the territory. In the kitchen, there was my bowl, and it looked like it was filled with something edible. I figured it wasn't the perfect filet mignon, but, you know, after the shelter, even simple food felt like a culinary masterpiece. First, I approached the bowl seriously, sniffed it to show that I'm actually a gourmet, and only then began eating. Yes, maybe I was slurping and even snorting a little, but that was all out of happiness. My owner watched me with such tenderness that I thought, now, that's care. Now that's what I understand. After dinner, I stood for a while, thinking about where I should settle for the night. I remembered the couch, but then my owner decided to show me my own bed. Oh yes, the bed. It's nice if you're a regular puppy, but I'm, by the way, a real bulldog. I need cushions, soft surfaces, a whole doggy kingdom. But for the sake of politeness, I lay down on the bed to show that I'm grateful and that I appreciate their effort for me. However, it didn't take more than 5 minutes for me to realize, nope, the bed is not for me. I went up to my owner and stared at him with a look that clearly said, hey buddy, I was promised a cozy home, so better make room on the couch. He understood me without words, smiled, and patted the couch again. Well, now it was definitely our spot. As evening came, my owner sat on the couch, and I settled down next to him, as any self-respecting dog should. The TV turned on, and the room filled with such a cozy silence that I even felt my eyes starting to close. It was a magical feeling, knowing you're not alone, that there's someone who cares for you, who lets you be yourself, asking for nothing in return. Well, except for some silence when I snore. In the evening, we watched a movie together, and it became our first little tradition. It seemed my owner had a habit of having a small movie night every evening. And, of course, I played along, sprawled out on his legs, as a tired, happy bulldog would. The next day, barely at dawn, I woke up from a loud rumbling, and only then realized it wasn't my stomach, but the sound of my own snoring. It turned out that I don't just snore. I do it so expertly that it sounds like there's machinery running nearby, from chainsaws to small lawnmowers. It was quiet around, but apparently my owner had managed to appreciate my nighttime concert because he was sitting on the couch with a look as if he'd spent the whole night trying not to wake up from my musical performance. I looked at him with an innocent expression, as if saying, sorry buddy, it's part of my charm. And he smiled. He didn't just understand. He accepted me with all my snoring and snorting, like it was a separate chapter of our agreement. My owner had breakfast, and I realized it was time to show off. It's no secret that dogs are masters of persuasion, especially when food is involved. I went up to the table, gave him my hungry look number 1, with eyes that doubled in size and a stare so intense that it could melt anyone's heart. But apparently, my owner was prepared. He raised his hand as if to say, no, Frank, this is my breakfast. But when has a real bulldog ever been stopped by that? I stood there, staring at him like a detective who found his suspect. And at some point, he gave in. He broke off a small piece of toast and handed it to me. Oh, it was a victory. Small, but so important. That piece of toast felt like a symbol. Now we weren't just a man and a dog. We were a team, one that could always count on each other, especially when it comes to food. After breakfast, our first full day together began. My owner got ready for work, and I stayed home, gradually claiming more and more space. Of course, I immediately went around all the corners, checking if a piece of food or a lost toast might appear as a souvenir. And then, I found a toy. It was in the shape of a stuffed chicken. Perhaps not the most sophisticated design, but who am I to judge? The main thing was that it could be chewed. I grabbed it and began testing it for durability. An hour or two passed, and then came the realization. I had thought that this house was complete freedom, that I could spend the whole day lying on the couch and doing whatever I want. But no, it turned out that without my owner, even the softest couch doesn't bring such happiness. I felt a little down. I thought, how could this be? Yesterday, I was with him, and today I'm alone again. I even growled a little at my chicken, and then it hit me. I might actually miss him. When my owner returned in the evening, he was probably a bit shocked by my enthusiasm. I ran up to him so fast that he barely had time to set his bag down before I wrapped my short legs around him and nearly knocked him over. He clearly wasn't expecting such a reunion of the century, but quickly understood that this was my new way of expressing love. Well, what can I do? if I enjoy the idea of greeting him, not just being a resident. After that, each day turned into a celebration. We developed our own rituals. In the morning, me trying to convince him to give me a piece of his toast, then a walk in the yard where I left my marks like signing autographs. And, of course, our evening routine with movies. Oh, speaking of movies, sometimes when other animals appeared on screen, I, of course, tried to show my interest. I'd get up, walk closer, and start barking at the screen. My owner would laugh, pat me on the shoulder, and say, "Frank, it's just a movie." And I'd just grin like, maybe you understand it's not real. But I like the feeling of being the home's main protector. Weeks flew by, and I began to feel that this place was truly mine. My owner not only tolerated my snoring and regular attempts to steal his dinner, but he also started taking care of me in ways no one had before. One day, he even bought me a special bed for sleeping. But, of course, we all understood that it was just decoration, because my choice was always the couch, and nothing else. Now, when we sit together on that very couch in the evenings, I look at my owner and feel that I've found my place in life. Here, by his side, I'm truly needed and loved, and no matter what my habits are, they don't annoy him in the slightest. We've become a team, real friends who always understand each other without words. I am Frank, a bulldog with a complicated fate and an even more complicated snore, who has found his home. My owner left in the morning, as usual. Everything followed the usual routine. He put on his coat, donned those ridiculous shoes. I tell you, I wouldn't take a single step in them, but he wears them every day for some reason. And, of course, completely ignored the tragic and despairing look on my face. He just shuffled off to his business, not even glancing at me, as if I were not his best friend, but just an accessory to the couch. Imagine this. You give this person all your loyalty, every drop of your love. You meet him at the door every evening, bark at every sound, guarding his peace, and he leaves and doesn't even ask how I'm doing here alone all day. Usually, after the door slams behind him, I sit for a few minutes on the floor by the door, waiting. Maybe he'll remember me, come back, even if just to say, "Frank, I'll be back soon." But no soon. This person disappears so quickly. It's like his business is somewhere in a parallel universe. So the first hour I spend, as always, inspecting my throne. Well, throne. The tiled floor in the hallway. In my world, it's as cold as my owner's indifference to my daily longing for him. Oh, if only he knew how I miss him. Every time he leaves, I get this strange feeling. It's as if something is about to happen. But, of course, it doesn't. I crawl closer to the window, trying to position myself to see at least a corner of the street. Of course, most of the lawns and trees are hidden, but if I'm lucky, I can catch the silhouette of a passerby and imagine it's my owner. An hour passes, and I begin to talk to myself. "Frank, maybe you should stop hoping?" But no, I keep sitting, staring into the emptiness. When noon comes, I realize that there will be no rescue. Trapped within four walls, I start philosophizing about life. They say dogs are the most devoted creatures. And you know what? I agree. But there's something unfair about it. Imagine, the owner leaves. I sit in silence, drowning in despair. And he's probably over there, in his work, not even thinking about me. My bone is all I have left. I chew it to distract myself, but even it doesn't bring me the joy it used to. Can you enjoy something when you're alone? Abandoned. The bone squeaks under my teeth, but inside, there's emptiness. Closer to evening, the silence becomes especially oppressive. Every sound makes me flinch. Did the furniture creak? Was that the door? Did someone walk by outside? Maybe it's him. Oh, Frank, stop hoping already, huh? But I can't stop. I rush to the door and wait. Every little thing starts to seem like a sign of his return. I've trained my ears so well that I can hear someone eating nuts downstairs, sitting on a bench by the entrance. And I hate that person. He doesn't know that every movement, every sound he makes, shatters my heart even more. Maybe I've gone crazy? Isn't that normal for a bulldog, right? Talking to myself, feeling time stretch into infinity, hoping that one day he'll come back early. But no, Another hour passes, and another. I'm almost sure it's already midnight, even though the sun hasn't set. Why do I do this to myself? Walking around the house, questionable activity. I already know everything here, from the smells to the creaky floorboards, but I start exploring every corner as if it were my first time here. This dusty shelf, he promised to clean it 3 months ago. And here are his slippers, which I chewed that memorable night when he came back late and didn't bring me a bone. He carelessly tossed them under the bed, but of course, I didn't forget, because it's all part of my world. Every detail in the house, his smell, his trace. And though he's not home, at least his memory remains. I feel his scent on the pillows, on the rug by the front door. But it's not enough. It's unbearable to see these things that remind me of him and know that he's far away. It's getting dark. He usually returns around this time. I sit by the door, and every sound is like a blow to my nerves. Could it be him? Maybe he's finally come back? But the silence becomes deafening, almost mocking, and I stay at my post, like a faithful guard. How many times have I repeated this ritual? Probably every evening. And at that moment, I wonder. He left in the morning, and here I am, waiting. If every day repeats, then why wait at all? I'll always wait, over and over again. Maybe this is my whole life, to wait? Maybe I was born just to be the background to his joy, the faithful companion who's always here, in this empty house where only the shadows remind me of him. I close my eyes, but I don't sleep. I feel that if I fall asleep, I might miss his return. I fear that if I don't greet him, it will be a betrayal on my part. After all, I'm his friend, and it's my duty. Everything else doesn't matter. But wait, I hear footsteps outside the door. It's him. It's definitely him. I jump up, claws scraping the doorframe, almost scratching it. My heart is pounding like a hammer. One more second and the door will open. But no, the sound fades away. Oh, why? Why is this happening to me? I stand by the door for a few minutes, listening. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he just forgot something and will be here soon. I try to convince myself that's true, but something inside tells me it's already late and he might not come back that soon. Night. Time seems to slow down, stretching into an endless series of minutes. Outside, there are some sounds. Another dog barking, distant voices. But I don't care anymore. I just lie there, face pressed to the floor, trying not to think of anything. This emptiness fills me from within, like a black hole. I don't have the strength to hope anymore, but I can't forget about him. Every time I think I've let go of the waiting, it comes back, like a wave, over and over again. Maybe he won't come today. I've almost come to terms with it when, from the darkness, the wind begins to howl, first softly, barely audible, then louder, as if it's the sound of something approaching. Slowly but surely, I freeze, listening, hoping it's footsteps on the stairs, not just the night noises mocking me, playing on my expectations. I roll onto my side, unable to bear the weight of exhaustion, and start to doze off. On the edge of sleep and wakefulness, my thoughts, as always, return to my owner. I imagine his face, how he smiles, reaches out to pet me, and says in his familiar voice, "Frank, I'm home." And that "I'm home" sounds so sweet, so comforting, that I almost believe he's really here. In the dream, I hear his footsteps, how he quietly opens the door so as not to wake me. Even though I'm always waiting, I leap up in joy and start running in circles, not knowing where to put my happiness. He crouches down to hug me, and I smell his coat, the smell of the street and work, a scent I hate, but which now is the best thing in the world to me. And then, I open my eyes. There's no owner, only emptiness around me, only silence. It was all just a dream. I sit alone in an empty house, and outside, it's still quiet, only the weak light of the moon filtering through the curtains. My heart tightens with longing. How tired I am of this loneliness. These dreams. They play with me, like a ball my owner throws to the other end of the room. Back and forth, back and forth. I lie down again, but this time without any hope. There's no point in waiting anymore. With the first rays of the sun, I feel a certain relief. A new day, a new weight, but this time not as heavy. The light dances on the walls, and I even feel a little better. Maybe I've just gotten used to this emptiness. Maybe it's part of me now, like his scent, which I smell everywhere. I climb back onto the windowsill, glance at the street, and watch as the world comes alive. Every morning gives me a new chance. A chance that today he'll come back a little earlier, that maybe today he'll notice how much I've been waiting for him. And then, when I've finally given up, I hear that long-awaited sound. The door creaks. The key turns in the lock. It's him. It's definitely him. My joy is boundless. I jump up, grab the handle, try to open the door, but it slowly opens by itself. And in the doorway, there he is, my owner. His tired face immediately changes when he sees me. He kneels down and hugs me tightly, and I can't contain my joy. I whine, wag my tail, jump around him, unable to believe that he's finally back. All my suffering, all my doubts, nothing compared to this moment. Now that he's here, I forget everything. The only thing that matters is that we're together again. All my complaints, all my waiting, it doesn't matter. Maybe tomorrow he'll leave again. Maybe he'll leave me alone once more. I'll wait for him because I know he always comes back. This time, I just enjoy his presence. Every touch, every word. I lie at his feet and sigh in relief. Now I'm whole again because he's here. My name is Frank, and I'm a bulldog. If you've ever seen a bulldog with a serious expression and funny wrinkles on its skin, then you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But don't be fooled by my appearance. I'm actually a real optimist and a jokester on the inside. Today, I want to share with you the story of my first Christmas in a real family. It was a time of discoveries, joy, and, of course, many funny moments. Before, my life was very different. I lived in an animal shelter for homeless pets. My days were monotonous. Gray walls, noisy neighbors, and constant waiting. I often sat by the window, looking out at the street and dreaming about what it would be like to have my own home, my own family. Sometimes other dogs would say that bulldogs aren't in favor, that people prefer fashionable, purebred dogs with long fur and gazelle-like grace. But I never lost hope. One day, a man came to the shelter. He was tall, with warm brown eyes and a broad smile. He walked slowly past the cages, stopping at each one, talking to the dogs. When he came to me, I felt something special. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew it was fate. He sat next to me and said, "Hi, buddy. What's your name?" Of course, I couldn't answer, but I wagged my tail so hard it seemed like it was about to fall off. That's how I ended up in a new home. It was a cozy house with a big garden, soft carpets, and the most comfortable couch in the world. My owner, let's call him Henry, immediately showed me all the pleasures of home life. The first thing I noticed was the huge window with a view of the street. I could sit for hours, watching pedestrians, cars, and, of course, the neighbor's cat, who always walked around with the air of someone who owned the whole world. Christmas was approaching, and the house began to transform. Henry brought home some boxes, hung up lights and decorations. One day, he brought in a giant green tree and set it up in the living room. At first, I didn't understand why we needed a tree in the house. Maybe it was a new place for my markings. But after the first scolding, I realized this was a special tree and better left untouched. Henry decided to decorate the tree, and I helped in my own way. My help mostly consisted of dragging the ornaments around the house and trying to chew on them. Henry laughed and said, "Frank, you're a real helper." I felt like part of the team. One evening, Henry invited friends over. The house was filled with laughter, conversations, and amazing smells. I was the center of attention. They petted me, complimented me, and even gave me treats under the table. One of the guests, Mark, said, "Frank, you're the most charming bulldog I've ever seen." I thought, of course, I'm unique. But the funniest part was yet to come. Henry decided to dress me up in a Christmas costume. Have you ever seen a bulldog in a red sweater with reindeer and a Santa hat? I looked, to put it mildly, extravagant. But I must admit, I liked the attention. The kids clapped their hands, the adults smiled, and I proudly strutted around the room, jingling the bell on my collar. At one point, I heard a strange noise outside. It was fireworks. I had never seen or heard them before. The first flashes and loud noises scared me. My heart raced, and I hid under the table. Henry immediately noticed my state. He knelt next to me and started speaking in a calm voice. Hey Frank, it's okay. It's just fireworks. They're beautiful, look. He picked me up. Yes, I'm not a small dog, but Henry is strong, and walked to the window. Together, we watched the bright lights in the sky. Gradually, my fear faded and I began to admire the spectacle. There we go, much better. Henry smiled. I felt safe and realized that with an owner like this, nothing could scare me. After the fireworks, the guests decided to sing Christmas carols. They grabbed a guitar, some drums, and started singing. I decided to join in and howled to the rhythm of the music. Everyone laughed and said I was a talented singer. Who knows, maybe I should try a career in music. During breaks between songs, I noticed there were a lot of treats left on the table. It smelled of turkey, cheese, pizza, and something incredibly appetizing. I quietly snuck up to the table and tried to reach the plate of pizza. Almost made it, but just then, Mark turned around and spotted me. Hey, look, Frank is throwing himself a party, he exclaimed. Everyone laughed, and Henry said, well, let him try. After all, it's his first Christmas. The pizza was delicious. I enjoyed every bite, feeling my stomach fill with happiness. After such a treat, I decided to rest a bit and lay down by the fireplace. The warmth of the fire was comforting, and my eyes closed on their own. But it was too early to sleep. The celebration was still going strong. At one point, a little girl, the daughter of one of the guests, came over to me. She sat down beside me and started petting my head. You're such a good boy, she said. I opened one eye and saw her smile. In that moment, I felt like I wasn't just a dog, but part of a big family. The night continued, and I had decided to join the fun again. Henry suggested everyone play board games. I didn't understand the rules, but I sat nearby and watched carefully. When someone took a turn, I happily wagged my tail, adding to the excitement. Later, Henry announced it was time for presents. There were many beautifully wrapped boxes under the tree. I didn't expect there to be something for me, but it turned out Henry hadn't forgotten about me. He pulled out a small box and said, This is for you, Frank. I eagerly approached and sniffed the gift. Henry helped me open it, and inside was a new toy. A plush bear. I was thrilled. I grabbed the bear and started running around the room with it, making everyone laugh and smile. As midnight approached, the guests began to leave. I saw each one off, wagging my tail and receiving warm words and petting in return. When the last guest left, the house fell silent. Henry tiredly sat down on the couch and sighed. I walked over to him and rested my head on his lap. Well, old buddy Frank, looks like it was a great Christmas, he said, petting me behind the ear. I agreed, letting out a satisfied purr. We sat in silence, enjoying the moment. I thought about how my life had changed in such a short time, from a lonely dog in a shelter to a beloved pet in a real family. This feeling was new to me, but so pleasant. The next day we woke up late. The sun was already shining through the window, and outside there was fresh snow. Henry suggested we go for a walk. I was all for it. The fresh air and the chance to play in the snow sounded tempting. We went out, and I immediately rushed into the snowdrift. The snow was soft and fluffy. I rolled around, jumped, and even tried to catch the snowballs Henry threw at me. During the walk, we met some neighbors. They smiled and greeted us. Some asked Henry about his new pet. I stood proudly next to him, showing my best side. One of the neighbors, Mrs. Smith, said, What a wonderful dog you have. He's so charming. Henry smiled and replied, Thanks, Frank really is special. On the way back, we ran into that same neighbor's cat. It was sitting on a tree branch, watching us from above. I stopped and looked at him. He squinted his eyes and said, Well, Bulldog, decided to take a walk? I smirked to myself. Yeah, just stretching my legs after a busy night, I thought. We exchanged glances, and I continued on. After all, why waste time with verbal sparring when ahead of me lay a warm home and a delicious lunch? Back home, Henry put the kettle on for tea and started preparing breakfast. I sat by the kitchen, hoping to get a little something for myself, and sure enough, Henry tossed me a piece of ham. You deserve it, buddy, he said. I eagerly ate the treat and felt like the happiest dog in the world. After breakfast, Henry decided to clean up. The house needed tidying after the party. I decided to help in my own way. I gathered all my toys and piled them in the corner. Henry noticed and praised me. Frank, you're a real champ. I proudly lifted my head. It's always nice when your efforts are appreciated. The day passed quietly. Henry and I watched movies, read, well, he read, and I napped beside him, and just enjoyed each other's company. At one point, I thought about how lucky I was. Many dogs dream of having an owner like Henry, and such a home. I decided that I would do everything I could to be the best friend to Henry. In the evening, Henry suggested we play. He pulled out a ball, and we started a fun game around the house. I ran, jumped, and tried to catch the ball, while Henry laughed and cheered me on. At one point, I accidentally knocked a vase off the shelf. It fell and broke. I froze, waiting for Henry's reaction. He walked over, looked at the shards, and said, "Well, it happens. The important thing is you didn't get hurt." I sighed in relief. Not every owner would have reacted so calmly to a broken vase. Before bed, Henry sat next to me and said, "You know, Frank, you're the best gift I could have asked for this Christmas." I looked at him with my big eyes and licked his hand. "And you're the best for me," I thought. Lying in my soft bed, I reflected on the past days. Life is full of surprises. Who would have thought that from the shelter I would end up in such a wonderful home? But the most important thing is that I found a friend, a true friend, with whom I will share joys and sorrows, fun and boredom. I remembered the words of the old dog in the shelter who often said, "Life isn't a place to rush. Look around, feel the wind, listen to the sounds, and find your melody." Now I understood what he meant. The next morning, I woke up to the sun shining directly in my face. I stretched and yawned. Henry was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. I walked over to him and he greeted me. "Good morning, sleepyhead. Ready for new adventures?" I wagged my tail in response. Henry suggested we go to the park. I was thrilled. The park is a place where I can run tirelessly, meet other dogs, and just enjoy nature. We arrived at the park, and I immediately dashed ahead. The fresh air, the smell of trees, the singing of birds, it all made me so happy. During the walk, we met other dogs. I made friends with a Labrador named Buddy and a Spaniel named Bella. We ran around, played tag, and just chatted about doggy business. Buddy asked me, "Are you new here? I haven't seen you before." I told him my story and he replied, "It's great you found such a good home." Bella added, "Yes, Henry's wonderful. He often comes here with his camera and takes beautiful pictures." I was surprised. A camera? I didn't know he liked taking pictures. Bella smiled. "Oh yes, he's quite talented." Returning home, I decided to look for proof of Henry's photographic hobby. Sure enough, on the shelves, I found many photos of nature, animals, and even a few of me. I felt proud. Maybe I'd be a model? In the evening, I went up to Henry and looking him in the eyes, tried to convey my thoughts. "Thank you for everything. You've made my life wonderful." He, as if understanding me, smiled and said, "You know, Frank, you've made my life brighter. You've brought joy and meaning into it." We settled down by the fireplace again. The fire crackled softly, creating a cozy atmosphere. I thought about how much was still ahead. New adventures, new friends, and, of course, more pieces of pizza left on the edge of the table. And you know what I realized? That true happiness isn't about expensive toys or gourmet treats. True happiness is being with those who love and accept you just as you are, who will pet you on the head even if you've been naughty, who will laugh with you and support you during tough times. So went my first Christmas in a real family, full of wonderful discoveries, laughter, and love. And I'm sure there are many more beautiful moments ahead of me. After all, life is beautiful when you have a true friend. And if you ever see a bulldog with a serious expression and funny wrinkles, don't rush to think he's sad. Maybe he's just deeply contemplating the meaning of life, or planning how to steal the next piece of pizza from the table. Or maybe it's me, Frank, enjoying every moment of my amazing life.